Hello there Tenno, and welcome back to another Frame of Lore video. Today we are going to be going over some key things that led up to the new war. Now, as always, there will be some major spoilers in here, so if you would prefer to go in blind, then consider yourselves warned. With that said, let's get into today's video. So one of the first events that will happen is the Chimera Prologue, which takes place after you have completed the Sacrifice questline that we went over in last week's video. In this quest, the man in the wall manifests itself as your operator and sits on the display stand where you have the helmet of the Lotus whilst wearing it on their head. After interacting with it, the Tenno are transported to Lua, where they must follow the man in the wall and fight off against shadow-like reflections of the Lotus. They once again find themselves in the chamber of the Lotus on Lua, though this time they see a portal, and they must enter. The Tenno ends up in a chamber looking very sentient in design, and they are able to void sling around it to certain points. At the end of the chamber, the Tenno can see Balus, though he is now part sentient. He seems to lament about the loss of his Orokin body and curses the Lotus for her deception. Suddenly, his eye starts to glow, which is implied to be the Lotus's vision. This is where the Tenno must stay out of his sight and void dash around the room. During this time, Balus will ramble on while several metal pieces fall into place in the middle of the room. When Balus realizes you are there, the pieces form together to make a sword. Balus instructs the Tenno to take this weapon he calls the Sentient Slayer for their upcoming war before looking away. When the Tenno grabs the sword, Balus turns to see them, and the Lotus's voice can be heard. The operator then find themselves back in the orbiter as if everything that happened was a vision, though now they have the blueprint to create a new weapon called Paracesis. During this time, the Sentients are looking for a way to neutralize their weakness to the void, so they force Alad V to create amalgams with other races. Though the Sentients also sent the Ropalolist, a gigantic bird-like sentient, to keep an eye on Alad, and should any sign of treason be seen, it was instructed to raise his city. Alad's project was a success, and he was tasked with gathering further data about the Tenno and make them fight his amalgams. The Tenno, however, discover the Sentient's plans and attack the Ropalolist, while Alad V secretly tries to support them. During this conflict, Natar contacts the Tenno, claiming to now be free from the Orokin manipulations which forced her to turn against her own race and family. She also claims that she has now returned to finish the war. She'll appear many times throughout the fight, and claim that she has seen the war's other face, implying that during her time on Lua, the void affected her as well. Once the Ropalolist has been defeated, Natar will say that its sacrifice will be used for further amalgams, showing that it was simply used to gather more data on the Tenno. Once that quest has been completed, the Tenno can activate the quest titled Error. It starts with a flashback, which shows the sentient invasion during the Old War. You see Railjacks attacking a Hunhao class sentient, and that the Orokin were protecting Lua at the time. We see the Tenno valiantly holding the line as sentients invade the surface of Lua, two of which are an Excalibur Prime and Mag Prime. We then see a cave under the surface of Lua, with reservoirs, destroyed sentients, and fallen soldiers laying around the room. A female Dax soldier tries to avoid the falling debris, though is grabbed by a humanoid sentient. Natar, who at this time was the Lotus, arrives accompanied by Tenno, among which is our operator. She demands the sentient lets go of the Dax soldier. The sentient, who is revealed to be Natar's brother Error, is horrified to see his sister viewing him as an enemy, and blame the Tenno for this. He makes her pick a side, the Tenno or her family. The Lotus states that she is Natar no longer, and proceeds to make the Tenno attack Error with void beams. The flashback ends here, and the operator is brought back to the present, though they find themselves aboard a sentient mothership, similar to the one in the Chimera Prologue. The operator watches a meeting between Error and Natar, as they are surrounded by sentients, with Balus leashed by Error. The siblings discuss their preparations for war, with Natar seemingly suffering lapses in her memory, still believing the Orokin to be alive. Balus is the one who confirms that the Orokin are no more, and that the other races are divided over the origin system. He also informs her that the only remaining threat are the Tenno. Era then instructs her to use their wickedness against them. Natar notices the Tenno watching them, to which Era says to let them. He commands her to sing for the sentients and call them home. With that, Natar releases several pulses, and our operator is knocked from the vision. After this, we move on to a fan-favourite event, which is Operation Scarlet Spear. The sentient invasion had begun, and their Murex warships were arriving. The Tenno had to coordinate their efforts to fend off these warships in space and stop their Condrix dropships on the ground. Little Duck set up the Scarlet Spear Flotilla Relay as the Tenno's primary base of operations, though during this time, the Grineer General Sargus Rook tried to sabotage the Tenno's ground efforts, believing that they were responsible for this invasion. Also during this time, Era and Natar are still aboard the sentient mothership where we saw them last. This time, Era is telling Natar that their mother, who she wrongly believed to be alive, is dead. He urged her to be the one to finish this war, as she has her fire. Natar notes that she seems to remember ordering the Tenno to attack and destroy Era. Era states that she is misremembering, and needs time to heal from what the Makers had done to her. Natar seems unconvinced, and points to the leashed Ballas, asking if he is one of the Makers. Era seems to have had enough, and grabs Natar, throwing her into a pedestal behind him, causing her to be trapped by a field of energy. He tells her to finish the war, and drops Ballas's leash, revealing his imprisonment was a deception. After the Tenno victory during Operation Scarlet Spear, Era and his sentient forces retreated and went into hiding. The next phase of their plan would begin as the second sentient invasion proceeded and the Orphic sentient units returned, though this time they could override Warframes, causing them to be disabled. Thus the Tenno had to wield Necromechs to defeat them. During this operation, Natar transmits messages to the Tenno, revealing that she was the one behind the Warframe disabling capabilities of the Orphics. Her messages about deploying them contains a letter, followed by a number, revealing a code which says, "I am dying." And there we have it, the events that led up to the new war, which also means you can likely guess the topic of next week's video. I hope you enjoyed today's video and the topics we went over. If you did, please leave a like and consider subscribing, as it really does help out the channel, though just the fact you have watched this already means so much to me. Stay safe out there, Tenno, and I'll see you all in the next one.